name is Pat Antonacci. I'm the Chief Customer Experience Officer at Swift, and I have the executive pleasure to be the sponsor of the ISO program at Swift. So welcome you to one of our flagship big issue debates that we have here at Sibos. Today, BID stands for the Big ISO Debate. We're going to have a great panel of discussion. I'll do just a quick introduction of the program. We're really witnessing a major shift in what we see in the payments landscape. You could say almost a generational shift in what we're seeing. Part of that is the move to ISO 20022, which is not just a technological shift or a syntax shift, but really a move into the way we process payments and we manage payments through the entire landscape today. For an industry, we're not looking at this just as a standard, but really what we get out of that change. So you're going to get richer data, more structured data, not just in payments, but also for trade, securities, and everything we do in that landscape. You're going to get better insights to manage financial crime compliance, manage liquidity, and offer new services to your clients based on that better, richer data as part of that process. The use of that structured data will also allow us to better interoperate in the fragmented payment space that we are currently operating in. With more quality, we can also better understand our customers' needs and react more quickly to those needs and demands as they evolve. And it also allows us to capture data at initiation, to really offer new services and better services in the front-end experience of your clients. Naturally, the journey to ISO 20022 is not an easy one. It takes the entire community's commitment to move together to this new paradigm. In 2017, the community said, let's move by November 2025, because by then we will have a huge amount of the payment market infrastructures also having moved, and we want to have that harmonization and that interoperability. We believe there is great potential for innovation and service improvements that this comes with this ISO 20022 move. Now, Swift has been there to facilitate and support that process in the journey of coexistence to the November 2025 date. I thank you all for joining us at Sibos this week. It allows us, as always, to exchange knowledge and ideas, look at different perspectives from around the world in where you are in your journey to ISO 20022, the varying adoption rates by type of firm, by industry, by organization. The collaboration makes it possible to interoperate, harmonize, and enhance the experience of our customers. If you haven't already done so and you want to drill down in details, please stop by the Standards Forum where there are multiple sessions throughout the week on ISO 20022. We're just a little more than 1 year away. There's a countdown clock over at the Standards Forum to that November 2025 date and the end of coexistence. So please make sure that we continue to evolve that together. With that said, we have a panel of experts today that are going to take you through that journey, a deeper dive into the challenges and opportunities that they're seeing throughout the ecosystem and the move to ISO 20022. So with that said, I'll hand over to Peter and the panel to please join us on stage. Thank you.
Okay, we're all sitting comfortably. So firstly, thank you to Pat for that excellent introduction. My name is Peter Harmston. I'm a partner at KPMG, and I look after our payments consulting business across the UK and EMEA. And I have the absolute pleasure of moderating this panel today. So we're day 3 of Sibos. There's been lots of conversations to date this week about ISO 20022. Great session on Monday, specifically focused on the countdown. However, today we're really looking forward. What are the possibilities of ISO? Now we've spent probably tens of billions on this implementation across various payments. I'm not just talking about cross-border, I'm talking about high value, low value. Is it really going to drive that step change in products and services internally to our organizations and also, most importantly, to our customers? So I've been promised a bit of a debate today, so I'm looking forward to the next hour, and it should be great. Instead of taking the glory for the team here, I'm going to ask them to introduce themselves individually before we get stuck in. Michael?
Michael Spiegel, I'm the Global Head of Transaction Banking at Standard Chartered Bank. Transaction banking for us means payments, liquidity management, trade, working capital, finance, and we have a joint venture with our markets colleagues for transactional FX. We operate in some 42 markets in a lot of very interesting frontier markets. So ISO 20022 is going to be very interesting.
Pamela?
And I'm Pamela Marr. I'm the Managing Director of the ICC Digital Standards Initiative, which is a public-private partnership that was founded by ICC, the Asian Development Bank, the Government of Singapore, WTO, and the World Customs Organization in order to provide the tools, the standards, and the guidelines to digitalize global trade.
Thank you. Svetanka?
Thank you. My name is Svetanka Nankova. I'm the Global Head of Sales for Institutional Cash and Trade Finance Services, covering financial institutions at Deutsche Bank. It is a pleasure to be here. Obviously, ISO, as one of the largest global transaction banks in the world, providing clearing solutions to partner banks across the globe, ISO plays an extremely important role for us internally with a view of our operations, but also externally in terms of the services that we look to provide to our partners across the globe.
Etienne?
Yes, Etienne Bernard. I am the Global Head of Cash Management and FI in Crédit Agricole CIB. So we operate in 30-odd markets, and it's a great pleasure to be here today. And we have great hopes for the future of what we're talking about.
Excellent. Well, thank you all. So let's get stuck in. We're going to start with an easy one to ease ourselves in this morning. Given the markets you all work in, ISO is most likely live in one form or the other, not in cross-border, could be low value, could be high value. What benefits, if any, have you realized so far with ISO internally within your organizations? Svenska, if I could start with you, that'd be great.
Thank you, Peter. Happy to. So it's a debate, right? So we'll try to be as controversial as possible. We didn't say how far we can go, so let's see how we do. So I actually looked up last night when the discussions on ISO started. I had to go on Google to check when we really started talking about the ISO standard. Turns out it was 2004. We're in 2024, so it's been quite a journey, and we still have a year to go in terms of the deadline. So the journey is continuing, and I was asking myself, can we already talk about benefits? The adoption rate of ISO is at around 26, 27%. So this is where the debate comes, right? But just looking at the ISO adoption from a Deutsche Bank point of view, I think we are definitely seeing certain benefits post going live with ISO. One of the things that we're experiencing is a significant improvement in the straight-through processing ratio of transactions, which obviously provides significant speed to the processing from an internal point of view, but also enabling faster payments for our clients. Something else that we have also realized as a benefit is a significant reduction in the false positive hits when it comes to the sanction screening of transactions. And what I would like to highlight in this regard is, again, it enables faster payments. I mean, this is one of the reasons why ISO was also kicked off, right? Faster, better, also safer. But the way we also think about a reduction in false positive hits is that it actually allows us to focus on potential true hits, which ultimately fosters better risk management. So those are just a couple examples in terms of where we are seeing specific benefits. And obviously, with the launch of the new standard, we do have significant data, structured data made available to us. And I think how we make use of it going forward, either externally or internally, is all up to us as institutions to leverage going forward. So I do think there's more to come. But maybe just to conclude from my point of view, I do not think the benefits of ISO should be looked at in isolation. The way we need to look at ISO is really in conjunction with new technologies that are coming, AI gaining significant importance and relevance as well. So I absolutely think that there's more to come. But what is highly critical is to ensure that we will, at a certain point, reach scale, i.e. that the adoption rate will increase and hopefully will hit close to 100 or even 100%, because to really reap the benefits of the new standard, you need scale. The payments business is a network business, and you can't do it alone, right? If one side of the equation is not on board, then the benefits are only partial.
No, excellent. I'm glad you managed to slip in AI as well in the first bit. That's important. So we can dwell into that a bit more. Michael, keen to get your views.
So we are rolling it out. We're migrating in various markets, international. There are also some RTGS systems are on. We've just gone live in Botswana, just to elaborate on sort of the frontier markets we're in. And it's really exciting. As Zadanga said, it's important that we all, as an industry, migrate there, plus corporates actually get ready for it. The benefits will be there. They're not quite there yet. There are some, of course, in terms of reduced false positives, which is very positive. I think there's a much wider application once we're there, and that's the journey we're on.
Yeah, agreed. Etienne, can you get your views?
Yes. Well, we're live in India, Michael. I think we're number one. We're just the number one being live in India. That's what I heard this morning, so I hope it's true. But joke apart, you said it. I think there is a lot around the operating model, a lot about the efficiency of the bank, the back office, a lot of the focus, you said it, that we're going to have on effectively the true challenge that we may have maybe in some of the payments we may face. This is really something that is key for us, because it is some of the processes. It is actually there is a lot of information available, so you can, if there is a claim or anything happening, you can actually, it's a lot easier to look at some of the data. So I think it's all about the operating model, the efficiency of the operating model, and that comes with cost. Because effectively, if you are more efficient, you become actually even more cost efficient. And I think this is really a virtual circle, if I may, if we do it right. The key point is adoption rate. And I think this is what was said. It's effectively around 27%, absolutely exact, which is far too low. We're just a year away from the deadline. So we need to pick up. And there is maybe, I don't know, I can say it, less and less certainty than we'll hit the 100 bar, basically. So that's something that is a concern if you want to be efficient.
No, excellent. So, I mean, a number of you there have touched on the network effect, the adoption, the fact we need to have that ubiquity. So kind of moving to some of the external parts to this. When we get that ubiquity, that standardization, the richness, let's talk a little bit about new products and services for your customers and their customers' customers. They're ultimately the ones that we're there to serve, the ones that are driving revenue, the ones we want to innovate for. So looking forward, not too far in the future, but into your crystal ball a little bit, what new products and services for your customers are kind of front of mind, are you starting to think about right now? And again, that can be in cross-border, high value, low value, etc. Michael, over to you first.
So before we go to the new solutions, maybe to give a bit of a context and build on what Zadanga started, it's a much wider application. So we see a very large number of paytechs or payment service providers who are already ISO 20 or 22 native from a format perspective or adopting it. In addition, which is interesting, there's quite a number of coin providers. I mean, if you think about the USDC Circle or you think about Ripple's XRP, they're also ISO 20 or 22. Now, what does that enable us to do is actually we can use 20 or 22 to bridge bit between the traditional finance and the decentralized finance. And that's actually a very fascinating element for the future. And when you then take the rich data into that and you combine it, you have almost the perfect innovation ecosystem. Something we lacked perhaps in the past, and that will enable us. So from a benefit perspective, clearly there are lots of value-added services we can derive from this for the corporates that are to adopt it. And I will say that a large number of the large multinational companies are already preparing or are partly prepared. There's, however, a much larger universe out there that still needs to prepare for it, right? There's massive benefits in terms of data mining because of the rich structured data. We spoke already about the fastness of payments because you can do pre-validation much deeper. You can do much better AML checks. You can, if you think about, in SEPA, we talked a lot about POBO, ROBO, right? There are not all that many companies who have really reduced everything to one account, right? Let's be honest. I mean, that was a hypothetical case, but it didn't really come through. Part of it because we didn't have enough data. When you think about the richness of the data that comes, and one of the challenges we will have is sort of the version 9, and how many of those 1,600 data fields we're going to use, and agree with our clients what they use. But that will allow actually much more application in that space. Virtual accounts will become much more richer. We have much more data there. So that we take the friction out. I think two more elements perhaps. One is the wider application beyond payments, right? Pat, you spoke about in the intro, trade. I mean, Pat and I spoke briefly before. I said trade is still on empty rails. Well, Pat said, no, they're on paper rails. So actually, we're quite a bit distant from this if you think about traditional trade. But there's much application, supply chain, right? And then you bring the element of sustainability into that. You can enrich the data. You have smart contracts, right? You can really do much more with that analytically, and that will benefit the whole ecosystem, right? I mean, our industry is essentially in the business of facilitating commerce, right? I mean, we provide services to you, many of you, and we're getting service from many of you as our friendly competitors and friends, and we're providing in the end services and solutions to corporates to facilitate commerce and trade and payments across the globe. And from an adoption perspective, we see already about a 35% adoption of our cross-border payments in ISO 20022, but it's still only 35%, and we need to do a lot more. And then the last mile, when you go from cross-border into domestic RTGS, that is when the music starts really playing.
No, that's really insightful. Thank you, Michael. Pam, I'm going to come to you last, just because I think you're going to have a slightly different view to some of our friendly transaction bankers here. Etienne, over to you next. Thoughts?
So it's very little I can add to what Michael just said, because he said actually not only today, but also what's going to happen tomorrow. So maybe we have a bit of a different view in terms of timelines, but effectively I think the topics are around the cash, the trade, the receivable, the supply chain, and also we can talk about interoperability. We have to find a new word for this one, by the way. And so that's one. Optimization, cash flow, agree, absolutely. There is one topic, though, we didn't mention, which is the fraud management. And I think this is a key challenge that we all have right now, or actually our customers are facing, which is about the fraud topic and how we can help them in trying to avoiding any of that. You know that the market was domestic. It's actually becoming a sort of a cross-border challenge. So everything that can help us helping them in that journey is welcome. Data will certainly help. Checking the data, you call it the whitelist, the blacklist, whatever. So there are many ways to help customers avoiding most of the fraud. I don't know, because there is also one topic is it tends to be innovative as well on the fraud side. So I can talk about today. Very difficult to talk about tomorrow yet, I must say. But I think we're going to enhance tools around that. There is one additional. is I think it could help us on some of the forecasting as well. And I think this is a big topic in liquidity management that goes together with some of the auto investments that can be positioned. So I think these are the topics I see happening in the short term in terms of how we can help the customers.
No, thank you, Etienne. Tabenska?
I'll probably just add a couple of comments because I think a lot was already said and covered, but from a kind of customer point of view, solutions point of view, obviously with payments becoming faster, you have an opportunity to unlock trapped liquidity. What we know from the corporate treasurers is that they still have a lot of liquidity sitting in idle cash that allows us as institutions to start thinking about better and alternative investment solutions. In addition to that, with the better data, you can improve reporting, reconciliation processes. I think Etienne rightly pointed out, you can do cash flow forecasting, data-driven treasury. You can enable scheduled payments. So literally, sky is the limit. But again, as a client-facing person, I think from my point of view, what I would like to do is always ensure that I'm co-innovating with clients, right? Anything we try to do should not be done in silos, and having always the customer in mind in terms of what their expectations are and what are the challenges and problems at hand that they're looking to solve is actually extremely, extremely important.
Yeah, that customer lens is paramount. It's very easy for us to focus inwardly, but the customer and partnering is super important. Yeah. Pamela, bringing you in here from a global trade perspective, what's your view?
So, from a global trade perspective, and specifically on how to digitalize global trade, the biggest problem is the lack of harmonization of trade standards, and even when you have clarity over which standard should be adopted, companies might not decide to adopt that because they respond to a different set of factors. Sometimes their buyer doesn't want to, sometimes they're just not able to. And so we need solutions for interoperability because fundamentally the benefits of digitalizing trade are in the data aggregation at scale and in the insights that it can provide and the auditability and the traceability. So unless you have a way to connect all the data points, which are in fragmented formats, we will not be able to get most of the benefits. And then actually the question of whether you should digitalize your trade just comes down to this really sheer crass calculation of, can I save labor or time or money by digitalizing this specific process? So in order to avoid that, we actually consider each part of the digitalization from that very brute kind of money-saving perspective, we need this solution for interoperability. So we're looking at ISO 20022, we're looking at different AI plugins, we're looking at OCR, we're looking at different ways to use technology in order to solve the connectivity problem between what's in the corporate backend and what is needed out in the public domain, meaning that is what gets exchanged and shared on a permission basis. So, another part of this is that the finance community, so there's 4 parts of the supply chain: the actual product, the compliance, the transport aspect, and then the finance aspect. So if we look at all of those, actually the finance aspect is actually far ahead from a digitalization perspective. So a lot of the problem of digital trade is in the confidence that countries, they don't trust digital, or they think it will open themselves up to scams and cybersecurity risks. So if we can use the finance chain to actually demonstrate that digital is safer, it's not only money saving and labor saving and data correct from a data perspective, but it's that also it's actually more secure, and that everyone will be more secure if it's more transparent. Then I see it as a great case for the rest of the supply chain
Yeah.
to go on that route.
And then do
Maybe-
you
maybe-
think? Oh, go
Maybe
ahead,
I
yeah.
can add one thing, which
Yeah.
I think is on top of what you just said. This is maybe the first time that we can be sector specific. And I think this is extremely important because of what is available in terms of data. And what we use, some of us are a bit older, so we used to have EDIFACT in the like 20 years ago in the auto sector. So, for example, and some of the guys were using specific reference in that. We can have a lot more right now for each of the sectors. That is also something that is going to ease that process, in my view.
Can I just spice it up a little?
Please.
I mean, in terms of, because I fully agree, and I think you've been very kind in terms of the obstacles of trade. And do we have, no, it's not Chatham House. Doesn't matter. I mean, look, it's the adoption, and it's not the technology, right? The technology is the easiest part. Distributed ledger technology, well, DLT is easier, I guess, has been there for a long time. I mean, we wanted to become agile just a few years ago, even though it had been around for 20 years. The adoption, the use of it is not there. So if you wanna get your shipment off a ship in Dakar, right, you can't use an electronic bill of lading because it's not written in local law. As simple as that.
Yes.
No matter whether you agree or not, the harbor master is not allowed to give you the, so even if the seller and the buyer agree on it, the harbor master cannot give it to you.
Yep.
Currently, we have, I think, 10 countries who have written that into law. We have 25 states in the US, which is great. A few big ones are missing. Thankfully, California is already there, but we have Texas and Florida and some other big port places missing. We need that, right? So it is much more and much beyond the technology, right? I mean, I would say the ISO matter is very helpful because it gives us rich data. And we have the technology to transport, though we should not underestimate the investments required for that. But then the actual use case and the actual adoption and the writing that into local laws, that is what hinders us quite often, unfortunately.
No, I think you're spot on. Svenska, do you think from a trade perspective, so we've had some views here that it's not just about the messaging, not just about the technology, and actually it needs a lot more than that. Do you have a view?
Yeah, no, I mean, absolutely. I think trade is just so much more complex. The whole value chain, it's just so much longer. And, automating a very small part of a process is not going to fix the problem. As Michael mentioned, there's definitely need for regulation when it comes to electronic documents, the validity of those documents. I mean, those are all steps that we almost need to take before we even start thinking about ISO and what it means specifically for trade. But obviously, when it comes to trade as well, the more you can structure the data, the faster you are going to be, right? The faster you will process the transaction, the faster will be the release of goods, the faster you will unlock the liquidity and you can ultimately recycle it. So I think in terms of vision, I think we all see the benefits, but the complexity of trade, right? Getting the corporates to actually fill out the form exactly the way you need them so that you can translate it into the required message and format. This is a heavy lift. This is a heavy lift. And in all fairness, I think it's also extremely costly. So one of the things that I've also learned just talking to our partner banks across the globe is when it comes to the adoption of ISO for payments, what you hear is that a lot of the big banks are definitely able to absorb the cost, but the reason why you have a slower adoption potentially is because some of the smaller financial institutions are actually struggling. This is a costly exercise. It does require a lot of internal change. And again, with multiple other priorities, it's not easy to put that on top of the list. I think that it has cost, the adoption of ISO has been in the trillions if you look at it across the financial industry. And when I think about trade, it's going to be a multiplier of that.
No, spot on. I think if we were to redo the business case now, there'll be some challenges around that, but that's why we really need to look forward. Kind of building a little bit on that one. we talked about the blockers and things that it's getting towards next year, and except that's part of it. But what we just talked about is some great things that could happen in the future, whether that be from trade, whether that be from products for ourselves internally. But what's really going to stop us? And Svenska, you started on a little bit there about the cost of it. But what's really going to stop us getting some of the benefits from ISO? Michael, what do you think?
So let's say I would have said 5. So Tanka covered definitely one. We've covered maybe another one. So the cost is not insignificant, and we should not only look at us as a financial industry. We also need to understand that there are changes in ERP systems required. There are changes in booking systems, and not everybody is on the latest ERP stack, right? So that takes time also for corporates. There is clearly the adoption. So the large corporates are on that journey already because they also see the benefits they will derive from that rich data. It's very critical that we get, and all of us as a community, we promote it, and we get corporates to think about ISO 20022 so that we can actually make use of that data, not only in cross-border payments, but over time also on the domestic rails. The second element in addition to cost, I would say, what I briefly spoke about is standardization. There are challenges with standardization. So we have a global standard. That's one thing. But then the domestic rails, you quite often have, and I mentioned one country, not saying that that's complicated, but you find that actually every country has a slightly different, nuanced way of applying the standard. Yeah. So there are fields that are definable by the, let's say, payments infrastructures, the central banks in the different countries, and they are different. And that poses challenges in terms of transforming the data you get global into the local and vice versa. Legacy systems, right? I mean, unfortunately, many of us are not neobanks, and many of our large corporates are not neo-corporates either. So we actually all suffer to one extent or another from some legacy systems, right? Yep. We're all replatforming, moving on global systems. That's all good, but it takes time, right? It is not as simple that you can just flick a switch and you agree to adopt a new format, let alone that it has already been a 20-year journey. And I remember the discussions to come to the first agreement amongst the banks, how the format should look like. That took also a couple of years. So, and then the acceleration of the domestic rails, because when the music really starts playing, in my mind at least, we're a connector bank, right? I mean, our home is the globe, right? So this is essentially our business. We're present in 53 markets. I book in 42. We service countries in way more than 100 clients in way more than 100 countries. But so to connect everything is then when it goes from cross-border into domestic rails. When you do, and then actually we can pay into the G20 objectives as an industry, which is sometimes challenged by the G20 in terms of cross-border payments are too pricey, banks charge too much, it's too slow, it's forgotten that if you go SWIFT, 90% of the payments reach the beneficiary bank within an hour. Within an hour, right? Yes. So that's all forgotten, and we as an industry, it is upon us also to think about how we can message this into the world. There are benefits, and we are collectively asked to drive this forward to actually take some of the blockers out. They will be there, right? I mean, challenges are there to be overcome. There are always opportunities. But there is, of course, it's not as simple as we said, okay, now with ISO 20 or 22, we solve for world hunger. Not going to happen.
No, really. That's good. Thank you, Michael. Etienne, views on other potential blockers to get these benefits?
Yes. There are a few in the market right now because it's not always on the banks or on the corporates. But it's also some of the IT providers are not ready as we speak, and I think this is a major issue because sometimes you have to face some migration, and it takes time, and 1 year is actually not a lot of time. So I think this is one. There is a second. Being French, I have to say it: resistance to changes. I have to be open to that. This is our bank has been through a major restructuration in terms of correspondent banking lately, and we have to revamp everything. And there is a lot of talkings, a lot of convincing exercise you need to do. in order to do that such a thing. And I think you need to prove what is good for the bank, what is good for the corporate, in order to do that. So there is a lot of internal discussion that needs to take place in terms of market discussions. I think this is one that is very important. And there are still a lot of groups, banks, trying to see that there might be another solution that could take a lot longer, that you could have a sort of a transition period where you face the two. And I know that we might need actually some of that, because at the end of the day, we only have 27% adoption level. So if we are not at 100, so what is going to happen? And I think this is a big challenge. I noted as well some regulatory divergence in some countries as a point that is of concern right now when we go like we are globally. These are the key aspects we face. But again, I think for us, long term or medium term, long term, we need to go there. We need a standard. There is absolutely no other way. It's the only way for the banking industry to help the markets, to help the corporates being more efficient. And I think this is actually very beneficial to the entire community. But it requires some effort, including the one I just mentioned.
No, spot on. Thank you. Pamela, just bring you in here. You've got a slightly different view, and you're campaigning out there trying to drive consistency and standards. What blockers do you see?
So for digital trade, Michael mentioned the legal framework. That problem, actually, from my perspective, especially with this year, that is a problem that is being solved. So governments, they know they have to update their regulatory frameworks in order to support trade digitalization. It's just a question of how. And it's a complex process. It takes 2 to 3 years, but it's a process that is actually manageable if you break it down into bits. So we are addressing that problem. 12 countries now, 37% of global GDP, another 26% have committed. So we are getting there. Okay, and the momentum this year is really very visible. And if you look at the WTO e-commerce JSI, that's 90% of global trade. That contains, it's not a ironclad commitment. It's a best effort endeavor to align to the model law. But still, the countries in there, they are basically committing to get with the program. So legal issue will eventually go away. Now, the other thing is, going back to standards, is that standards are very complex. So we need to recognize that companies that have adopted standards which are not globally interoperable, they need a solution from their back end, which is generating the trade data, to the trade platform, which is where data is exchanged. And so we need to bring the ERP providers, the big IT infrastructure providers, and the fintech solution providers who can provide that bridging gap. We need to make the standards more accessible. We need to make it simpler so that SMEs can also easily enter global trade, because today most SMEs don't trade internationally simply because it's just too complex. And if you trade internationally, most likely you only trade with one other country, because it is just you die from the complexity. So we need to solve that problem, which is just a complexity problem. I think the last one Michael referred to, and also Etienne referred to, which is the human problem, which is that we actually need a mindset shift. And in trade, this is really, really a major issue, because global trade has grown up where your competitive advantage is that you absolutely know more. It's pure information arbitrage. Like, you know where the suppliers are. You know where the green suppliers are. You have access to information that is not available to someone further downstream. Now we're going into the era where we're going to share data. Like, come again? So we need to basically help all of the supply chain players understand that their competitive advantage is in them actually opening up a part of their books, and that isn't going to compromise their ability to trade, but rather it will be an asset. And that requires that those downstream, the buyers. So right now, we've achieved the change that information flows from upstream to downstream. So all the suppliers have to give their information to the buyer because the buyer is king. But now, we need to go into an era where the buyer actually has to return some of that benefit. And that is what information sharing is going to give us, is because when everyone on the chain actually sees where the good is, who's producing the value, who is gaining from that, then that will be not only more equitable, but it will actually give everyone a better chance to contribute. So this mindset shift for me is, potentially one of the most difficult ones, because like legal's there, standards, we're getting there, technology has been there,
Yep.
but now we got to get the humans to play along.
The human element is super important. But before we move on to something a bit more controversial, Svenska, anything, you mentioned cost at the beginning, which is, and it's not a level playing field. It's okay for you guys, big banks.
Yes.
But there are a number. What other things?
Well, listen, I think so much was said, right? It's difficult to go last and add to that. But, probably in a nutshell, from my point of view, when I think, about what can really throw us off the rails is, I just think about my day-to-day and the complex environment we operate in, right? If we tomorrow have to implement a new set of sanctions, if tomorrow we're dealing with a more difficult geopolitical environment, well, there we go, priorities immediately shift, and that can absolutely cause a delay. Something else that we should also be thinking about is, other alternatives. Are there other alternatives emerging, right? The competitive landscape continues to change, so maybe that's something that we should and we could also talk about.
That's a great question and a great point. So, this is a SWIFT conference and we're having a fantastic time here. And we've had some broadly positive conversations with a sprinkling of blockers along the way. But is ISO 20, excuse me, is ISO 20022 the only option to drive global interoperability? Are there other standards? Are there other products? Are there realistic alternatives to the scale and ubiquity that ISO has? Svenska, just as you're on a roll there with that, what's your views?
Well, listen, from my point of view, I think ISO and SWIFT will continue to dominate. Sometimes when I think about this, I don't ask myself, is there an alternative to ISO? Is there an alternative to SWIFT? I go actually one step further, and I think there are discussions about settlement of transactions on the blockchain. There are certain areas and partnerships we're exploring with various institutions. So yes, I do think that there will be emerging alternatives. Again, the question that always comes to mind is, will they scale, right? Because for everything to work, you basically require that whole network to be on board, and you require scale. In addition to that, I kind of keep bringing up the cost piece, because it is important to sustain all of those developments. We actually do need to make a bit of money as well. So what are the alternatives that will also drive that? But I'll leave it to some of my colleagues to share as well.
Michael?
I will probably want to split those two discussions, right? ISO is a format standard. SWIFT is an information network, which is ubiquitous in my mind because it's the biggest network of networks.
Great.
I don't think there is we should not even consider an alternative to ISO 20 or 22. If we allow that discussion, we're going to be in nowhere land forever, right? We're never going to get anywhere. So to me, this is the standard we have agreed on and we got to drive. Now, what is nice about it, because the alternative providers, and one of those we are already part of that you may have referred to, Partior, which is a DLT-driven settlement system and information system that uses ISO 20 or 22. right? I refer to the paytech or payment service providers. Most, not all yet, but most are already ISO 20022 format compliant. We spoke about digital assets, or what we don't want to talk about, crypto assets, right? But digital assets, if you think about stablecoins, they run on ISO 20022. So this is the standard, and it has to remain the standard. There are, of course, alternatives, right? And I mean, in preparation of the panel opening between Javier and Bill, we had a discussion about this, and of course, we are fully invested in SWIFT. And I think we should make no mistake as a financial industry that this is a wonderful network of networks. And there will be alternatives that will be complementary, right? There will be internal alternatives that some of us have already gone live with, where essentially you have book transfers at the end of the day, where you have your own system, your own kind of coin. Then you have players like Partior, which is a DLT-based technology, and we welcome the more participants, and I think ENBD just got live yesterday or announced it. There are others coming. The more, the better. Why? Because it only works if it is a network of networks. Now, all of us have a role to play. The larger banks, who are correspondent banks, become also a network of respondent banks. And we need to connect everybody, because only if it's all connected, it will work. And you know, sometimes we talk about, are we seeing in a phase of deglobalization? I think that's a big, big myth, right? We're in a phase of reglobalization. Globalization is irreversible, and it is the only way forward so that we can all prosper and develop across the globe. So I would split those two, and yes, there are challenges and there are alternatives, but we should stick to this one standard.
Like it. Excellent. So keep the commitment. ISO. Etienne, views from your perspective?
It's going to be tough for me to say anything else right now. So, but just to be absolutely clear, if we just add the capacity of instant payment, verification of pay, everything, because this is actually an environment, and you need to add things up. This is something that could be really an unmatched offer altogether. So yes, we need to fight for a standard. And for me, it feels almost like a survival mode. This is really key because we need to accelerate. Some businesses, because of where they come from, some of the PSPs, etc., they might have a combination. But it ends with the standard, and actually, I think many start, and I hear that since I'm also a fronting one, and I see a lot of customers, and actually I hear that, okay, by the way, if I enter in whatever region, for example, Europe, wow, I can connect directly to that many countries. Well, that's great. So this is why we need effectively to fight for this standard all together. Not only for the standard, it's also ultimately we'll need to fight for people also and corporates, for example, to fill it with the right data. I think this is something that is going to be very important. It's not about only the standard, it's also about the data we're going to share between with our customers that is going to make the value of the usage of that network.
No, you're spot on. Last piece for you, Pamela. Anything to add from the standards and the ISO and what it means to you, and you know, is it the only option for trade as well?
Yeah, so I actually agree with Michael that we should split the conversation into the ISO question and the SWIFT question. For me, SWIFT is a real potential solution. The SWIFT network is a real potential solution for interoperability. In fact, already SWIFT has demonstrated that it could actually interoperate interoperate an e-bill of lading between two different networks. And so I think we should be trying those innovations more and more to demonstrate that SWIFT could actually be useful to the non-financial world. Okay, obviously operating through finance, but that the model is what is actually going to provide a lot of solutions because everyone is already on it. That's one. The second one is that ISO is one kind of trajectory that the finance industry is going towards. I actually also think that we should be exploring all the other kinds of innovations to expedite connectivity between the different players on the supply chain. And that I mentioned AI. So the use of AI to bridge the gap between non-standard data and standard data, or structured and non-structured data. Also the use of tokens to simply execute go upstream into the supply chain where some players may not have visibility, in order to kind of facilitate financing of the upstream. And that, it doesn't totally avoid the use of banks, but it actually skips some part of the trade finance process in a way that is still quite secure and in a way that can be traced. So I think we need to use more of these solutions, many of which are actually created by fintechs. So that's why when a government is looking to promote trade digitalization, one of the there's a list of 8 things that we tell them to do, including, legal and so on. One of those is, nurture your local indigenous fintech, trade tech, reg tech community, because they're the ones who are going to be exploring these kind of new frontier type solutions. And, then it comes back to the big institutions, the big buyers, the big banks, and so on, to say, okay, how do we fit this into our ecosystem? Because, let's admit it, the future is not going to be centralized. The future is how we navigate when everyone is using the solutions modularly that they want to use. So, yes, there will be organizations like SWIFT which can help connect us together, but we should also recognize there's a lot of great stuff out there, and we should be looking, how do we enable the connectivity with them too?
Agree. No, excellent points. And I think we've got about 7 minutes left. So I want to kind of just bring this up a level and really think forward, team. This is about get those crystal balls out. We're sitting here in 5-6 years' time, different Sibos, different city, and we've got absolute ubiquity across cross-border, high value, low value, all the economies, all the benefits, or a lot of the benefits we talked about today have been realized. So what's next? What is the next big leap forward in standardization, interoperability in the payments ecosystem? Let's kind of really look forward. Svenska, what's your views?
Well, listen, so I think we've made significant progress. In 5 years, hopefully, as you said, we'll be through all the hurdles that you mentioned, and we'll have scale in terms of the ISO adoption, and we'll be already reaping a lot of the benefits. So when I think about the payments industry, and just in general the world, we're seeing so much automation, so much digitalization of industries across the globe. Our clients, their operating models, and I think understanding how we can better plug into those and generate even more efficiencies will be critical. Thinking about tokenization, right? BIS just launched the next initiative. How can tokenization can help us improve again the payments service industry and make payments even faster. Thinking about central bank digital currencies, will they scale? There's just so much to think about. But again, when it comes to the standard and what Michael highlighted, ISO, from my point of view, is there to stay. But I think we're just going to see so much more happen in terms of how we can leverage that standard going forward. Again, 2023, AI was the buzzword. I come back to that, right? But we're just at the beginning of exploring all of the opportunities that AI will deliver. And again, that combination of data, there's a lot of data collected across the globe, across the world, across multiple industries. How we utilize that data to solve particular problems at hand will be critical. So from my point of view, it's just so many things that are happening in the world throughout the payment industry as well, but also, again, looking at our clients' operating models that will really, help us get to that next level, hopefully in 5 years.
No, thank you. Etienne, what's your crystal ball telling us?
Crystal ball. I have a new one every day. So, no, I think we're talking about also a lot of connectivity between the digital and the traditional. For example, in the currency world, there will be a greater connectivity there. Of course, again, I should have said we need to have the 100% adoption level. It's the key assumption, okay? But so 5 years time we should be there. Or the one that are not there should not be in business anymore. That's basically, for me, I think, the outcome. Effectively, AI is key. I think we start seeing some benefit, but we are going to see a lot more about predictive, autonomous decision that might be taken. And we see some of that already in some part of the world, actually, coming from, for example, Asia. There is a lot, and actually I think Michael mentioned it at the beginning, how we identify, for example, ESG transactions, promote of the ESG agenda, and I really hope that it's only going to increase. And the fact is that we need to push that forward. We need to have the criteria to select, to be able to select these transactions a lot better in the future. And I can't help it, but I need to talk about trade and receivable and supply chain. This is only a beginning. But back-to-back financing, you mentioned it. I mean, basically, we are going to have data saying that, okay, there are movements between entity A, entity B, entity C, etc. So what about the back-to-back financing? It's not about only one supplier versus one customer. It's about the supplier of the supplier of the supplier. And that's actually, this is where I see something really in the financing, in the loan side, really moving in the years to come.
No, thank you, Etienne. Michael, can you finish us off on a high with your crystal?
On a high. Oh my God! I was just about to say, I love looking at the crystal ball. I think we first, and I just want to build on that. But let me make one point before we start dreaming about what's next. Let's get this done.
Yeah.
Yep.
Right? Because if we get this done, I rephrase. Once we've gotten this done, then we can actually build. Exactly, I think what Tatanka said, what Etienne said, what Pamela said. We can build a future that's connected. We can build a future that's interoperable. I had a weird thought just now whether ISO 20 or 22 is a bit like one of those plug converters, right? When we all travel, there's not one single socket globally, right? So you need a converter to put in plugs. It's a little bit like this, because what I said at the beginning, the standard is there, the standard is adopted, the standard gets adopted by the new economy, by the new technology, by new providers. So, and SWIFT will play, in my mind, also a very critical role, because when you think about Project Nexus, right, they've already proven they can be a connector between different digital frameworks, between CBDCs. So the future is bright, and maybe we can even solve, to Etienne's part, the deep tier supply chain challenge, right? I mean, there's trillions of dollars unlifted because small businesses don't get financing, SMEs don't get financing. Technology's been there, but the format's not been there. The rich data has not been there. So yes, absolutely, the future is bright, and it will have to build on us completing ISO 20 or 22, create this connectivity global, create the rich data global, so that everybody can benefit.
Thank you. No, thank you, Michael. So, I mean, that was us finishing on a high. And, what I've heard here, ISO's here to stay. We've got to keep focused. We have to deliver it. We must collaborate. It's a network effect. Customers are central, and there's lots more to come. So thank you so much to the audience, and thank you so much to the panel today, and I hope you enjoyed it.